Good afternoon, Marines, and welcome back to Part 7A, the Fall from Grace for the Department of Ohio. As stated earlier, with any group, there are those little people at the bottom that must contribute to make all this sustainable. I've been mostly speaking about those individuals in Ohio, and I am, or have been, gradually moving up into their support network, such as Jerry Holt and Russ Miller, for example. For them to be able to operate in such a manner, there must be what I call reprobates in place to cover the small details. In this session, we will be discussing Warren Griffin, the Senior Vice Commandant of the National Organization, and how he contributed to the fall from grace by covering for and carrying out what Mr. Baker wanted him to do. As we move forward, we will be leaving Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor alone for this particular presentation. We have already addressed or discussed Mr. Borka, Mr. Holt, and Mr. Miller in parts 5 through 7. So who does that leave us with moving forward? Well, if you move down to the second row from left to right, Mr. Griffin, then you have Mr. Morgan. We'll skip over Sergeant Schultz. You have Mr. Tobin and Mike Sturch. One would not believe that all these individuals played a part in the fall from grace, and it took all of them, plus the Ohio Knucklehead Gang, over 18 months to remove me from the rolls of the Marine Corps League. You definitely cannot say it wasn't a team effort. But have I been removed in accordance with Chapter 9, Attachment 7? The question is out there. So, with no further ado, let's get on with Warren Griffin's contributions. As you can see by the email traffic between myself and Mr. Borka, Mr. Griffin was given a precise task by the COO, and from what we discussed earlier, it equates basically to the CEO giving him instructions as to what he needed to do. It clearly states that the materials provided him were done so they could be presented to the 15-member minus 2 Board of Trustees for discussion. That's the National Board of Trustees. Upon receiving that email from Mr. Borka, I emailed Mr. Griffin on the 27th of March and provided him with all my contact information and offered my help in providing any clarification of materials he or the board members would need moving forward to understand everything that's contained in the materials I sent Mr. Borka to begin with. Mr. Griffin responded by thanking me, and then he proceeded to say that he gave all the materials to Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor to go through and possibly answer some of my concerns. What the hell was he thinking? I tell you what he was thinking, and that was to protect and cover Johnny Baker's ass because these were serious allegations. He also instructed me to give them a few weeks to put that response together. They will send me a letter. Wow. I was dumbfounded. I was taken back by his decision not to present the materials to the National Board of Trustees as per the direction given him by the COO. If you know Mr. Griffin, he is a soft-spoken individual that has yet to find his big stick, backbone, or set of balls to do what is necessary that usually accompanies an individual's soft-spoken character. In the phone conversation of March 30th, 2022, with Mr. Griffin, he again affirmed that a letter would be forthcoming explaining or attempting to validate why they did what they did by installing department officers illegally at the March 17th Board of Trustee meeting. that had no quorum. Again, we're here with no quorum issues. During the Central Division Spring Conference. This will be my first attempt to try to play this recording so that you, the viewer, can hear it and to see that these things are not being made up at all. So I'm going to try and play this tape, recorded phone conversation between myself and Mr. Griffin in regard to him not doing what he was asked to do. His no merit statement or findings that he will find as to the appeal of the letter from Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor. And lastly, his acknowledgement that after 3 weeks of being involved with this situation, he more than likely will be the hearing board chairman / jurisdictional JA in the matter instead of recusing himself as well. I hope that you will be able to clearly hear the conversation as noted earlier.
Documentations and timelines and everything else typed out. I didn't give that to you guys because I want to know where we're going with it first. Because I don't want to waste your time or my time if nobody's going to take it seriously, and I have to move it forward. Yeah, but let me. I can cut to the chase. I don't like that term, but anyway. Phil Zamor is supposed to be sending a letter to you explaining their position on all of the issues there. They said that you had some valid points and some that weren't valid. Now, you may question that and say, well, you could say they're not valid, but they are valid. But you should be getting that. He's supposed to be doing it up this week, and then sending it out to you. So, just so I know ahead of time, did you brief all of the Board of Trustees members as Bob Bork had indicated to me? Or did you just go talk to those two guys? No, it just, it wasn't before all the Board of Trustees. It was just those two. Yeah. And, of course, they would say the things that they say. And, of course, I can provide you with it, but if you take a look, you may want to, this is, I have to straight with it, you may want to hold off on that and present it as an appeal, or, JA, and all I want to know is what we're going to do moving forward. If I get a letter back, as you have indicated, which is fine, I mean, that's not an issue, but the problem I have with that is that you're asking the bank robber to sit and watch my money. Well, you're right, but I can't work with the two individuals that have lied to me over time, which I've proven. Right. But, okay, and that's where your letter of agreements would come up. Say, okay, I am in disagreement with this letter that you've sent to me, and these are the two issues, three issues, whatever it may be. And I'm filing a grievance against these issues, against you on these issues, and that's what we went to the national board. I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, but well, basically, I know what you're saying, and I understand, because that's why I asked Bob. I have no clarification when I have the charge sheet that goes against the actual Commandant and the NJA. Who am I going to send my package to for review to say I haven't married the whole case? Who's going to do the review? If it's going to be history, it ain't going to happen. No, right, and they have to recuse themselves from it.
This could go on for another 20 minutes, and I don't want to tie you up. As you can see, Warren Griffin really doesn't have a clue as to what needs to be done in this particular situation. I understand, according to Mr. Tobin and a few others, this is an unusual situation where both the National Commandant and the National NJA have been called out about their performance. So hopefully you got a little gist of how they're backtracking and doing things up there from Mr. Griffin. And as always, let's move on to the charges that have been filed and or adjudicated. Now, after talking with Mr. Griffin on that phone conversation, along with other emails that support our conversations back and forth, I eventually had to file charges against Johnny Baker and Phil Zamor for quorum violations and conduct unbecoming. Now, in accordance with Mr. Griffin, I sent that package in as per his instructions. I never did get the letter prior to the submission of these findings or charges from Phil Zamor or Johnny Baker. So I filed the charges. As you can see on this slide, from me to Warren Griffin, because he said he'd probably be the one that'd have to look at it. So I did that. You can't send charges to the COO. He doesn't deal with that. He'll just defer them. As you can see here, disciplinary charges were filed for violating the quorum issues on April 5th of 2022. So Johnny Baker and Mr. Zamor, being the respondents in this case, were preparing for their defense, which they've had about 3 to 4 weeks to do so, with Mr. Griffin sitting in on it, because he had the heads up or the reach around to try to clarify and clean this up prior to it coming to this. And like I said, you wouldn't have never guessed, but yeah, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Tobin, the junior past National Commandant, reviewed the said charges. When in reality, when you submit charges or a grievance, you submit them to the NJA or a jurisdictional JA, who by him or herself determines whether or not there are merits within the charges to warrant a hearing. Not 2 or 3 people sit together around the table and discuss it. It goes to one person decides. Not in this case, of course. This is a case that involved both the National Commandant and the NJA. So I guess they wanted to make sure that they covered all the bases, crossed all the the T's and dotted all the I's before telling me he had no merit. So I sent Mr. Griffin an email stating that charges have been sent. I gave him the reach around, and that they were sent to him because he's the senior officer. And as we all know, you can't file charges with the COO. It also stated that it's been over a week and no letter has yet to come to me a week past our phone conversation, during our conversation, from either of them. They are currently trying, as I said earlier, to put together a solid defense, the three of them, to throw back these charges that I'll be submitting based on the information they already have in front of them. What really still bothers me about all this is the fact that, as per the COO's message, you were to present, Mr. Griffin was to present this material for clarification and help to the Board of Trustees. Yet he went straight, beelined, and basically said, hey guys, and this is to Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor, his buddies, hey guys, here's what is coming down the line. Mr. Smith is going to be pressing charges against you if we can't get this cleared up. So what do you say? Let's sit down and let's figure this all out and come up with a viable defense. Now, as for the message below, that is what you told me during our conversation last week. You're saying the same thing again this week. And it will be the same the week after. And that was the justification for going ahead and doing the charges prior to getting the letter. I never got it in a timely fashion, nor did I get any reach around or any inquiries or anything to help resolve this. So as per what that very conversation we had on the phone that you heard me say, I'm going to have to press charges, where I indicated my disapproval of the handling of this whole thing, and where I indicated I would not be waiting for any period of time which I didn't originally agree to. Therefore, since they never reached out, I made the first move, and I reached out to them. Mr. Griffin had been working with Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor for over 3 weeks, preparing for this filing. Mr. Griffin, based on the phone conversation regarding these issues, knew the ins and outs of the violations to the quorum and the lies that precipitated the actions of the respondents on both the 17th and the 19th of March. It takes Mr. Tobin and Mr. Griffin less than a week, a couple days, to investigate and find no merit in the allegations against Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor, as it pertained to the quorum violations and the conduct unbecoming. Mr. Tobin and Mr. Griffin stated in their letter that the quorum violations had no merit, and just 4 short months later, the only case to be left standing was the one as the department began serving its sentence handed down by the very individuals who participated in those violations to begin with. Later on, moving forward, I will present again a tape, this time with Johnny Baker and Phil Zamor, saying that they did everything above board and in accordance with the references, and that the newly installed officers are good to go. This resolves all your issues and questions, and then we're going to dismiss the grievance against Gary Evans and Roger Smith because we've taken care of it by installing these officers. But again, that'll be for another day. With the charter being suspended because of that, I guess the quorum violations really did in fact have merit after all. He cannot state with a clear conscience that he did not aid them and help cover up their actions. Mr. Griffin may be able to go to the phone booth and confess, but it will not absolve him of his participation in the fall from grace for the Department of Ohio or from Marines that feel betrayed by his title of U.S. Marine. Shame on you, Mr. Griffin. Shame. So in summary, Mr. Griffin, as noted in previous presentations in this one, read and approved the department bylaws for the Department of Ohio in 2019 as the NJA. He signed off on it. I have a signature page indicating that they were good to go and not in conflict with the national bylaws of that time. Yet, he could not stand up for his decision when questioned by Mr. Miller, supposedly. Excuse me. The question Mr. Miller posed to him was, hey, Warren, was there a quorum present when the Department of Ohio bylaws were approved by their body at the 2019 convention? That's a hell of a question. Now let me ask you, the viewer, has the NJ office, excuse me, or the department NJA ever required a statement or minutes or notes from your convention or detachment meetings that indicated that there was a quorum present when you are submitting your bylaws, administrative procedures to them for approval to ensure that they're not in conflict with either the department or the national bylaws? If you, or any one of you, or any department or detachment out there had to provide this proof of a quorum to either department or national JAs prior to getting your bylaws, administrative procedures approved, please let me know, because I don't want to go out on a limb here and say I've never heard of that. But I am. I'm going out there and I'm saying it. So what does Mr. Miller do with this information? Well, he turns around and says, well, you can't prove that there was a quorum in 2019, therefore you can't prove that your bylaws, administrative procedures were in fact voted on by the body, therefore Roger Smith and those charged in violation of those bylaws, administrative procedures, those charges have no merit. And he throws them out. And Johnny Baker is aware of all of this. So Mr. Miller, working with Mr. Griffin, again, tampers with and throws out charges against individuals who violated the quorum. Mr. Griffin also lied to me and others in regard to what he was doing while in the service of Johnny Baker and Phil Zamor. He was working with them to prepare a defense knowing that he would be the individual reviewing said charges for merit when presented to the national for adjudication. Can you say conflict of interest? Can you say recuse yourself? He quickly said that the national JA would and the national commandant would have to. But him? No, he's above reproach. He won't have to recuse himself. He can find it truthfully and honestly, even though he's worked with them for 3 to 4 weeks prior to receiving these charges. And it took him less than a day or two to send it back saying no merit. Go figure, right? I believe by him reviewing this package gives a whole new meaning to the word conflict of interest. Wouldn't you agree? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? However, moving on. Mr. Griffin failed to follow directions from the COO, who is responsible for the daily operations of the league and who he reports to through Johnny Baker, and decided he knows best by working with Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor. Marines don't do that. Employees don't do that. When was the last time you told your senior leadership, your supervisor, your boss, your CEO, to pound sand? I'm not doing that because it's not what I want to do. Okay, so, you're not in the Corps no more, and you don't have to, follow those orders directly as a gunny giving a sergeant a directive. But how about you go into work tomorrow and try that out? no matter what your position is. Go into work tomorrow and try telling somebody you ain't doing that as per instructed. You can let me know how that works out for you. I'd be surprised if you still had a job, but this is the newer generation of people, so they'd probably be more hugging and feeling and understanding of your plight. But in the League, you become the next National Commandant. And that's what Warren Griffin is holding on to. And that is the sole motive behind doing what he did. He'd rather have a white cover than uphold the title of United States Marine. So, I confronted all of them. And once Mr. Griffin received that confrontation, notice, about his complicity in all these matters, he responded. Not back to me now, not back to me, but he responded to Mr. Holt and the entire national organization with, and I quote to you now from his letter, hopefully we can have the support of the greater number of Ohio League members who can see through this ego-driven malcontent. Talking about me. My response to him and all of those he sent that to was, if you would have done your job, Mr. Griffin, as directed by the COO, instead of protecting Mr. Baker and Mr. Zamor, this would not have happened. Lastly, there's no bigger ego than those who have lied and believe that lie to the extent they are willing to stake who they are on it. No ego. Truth is all I need. You might want to consider the 3 weeks you lied to me about the letter I was supposed to get from them. It was your failure and the National who caused me to file the charges against them to begin with. Unbelievable that you found no merit in a fraudulent installation of officers without a quorum. That alone tells me all I need to know about your character and ego. End quote. So, Marines, until next time, may God continue to bless you and yours. Semper Fi.